You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Hey, it's Haley Steinfeld. When everything requires your attention, it can be tough to figure out what to prioritize. But I'm here to talk to you about something that you should always put first, your breast health. In fact, if you're 40 and over, you should be getting screened once a year. And if you're under 40, it's never too soon to visit yourattentionplease.com to learn about your breast cancer risk. So go on, pay the girls some attention and take the time to find out your breast cancer risk at yourattentionplease.com. Trust me, your future self will thank you.
Have I Got News for You is back for another season. Roy Wood Jr., Amber Ruffin, and Michael Ian Black are finding the funny in the week's biggest stories. Have I Got News for You returns Saturday at 9 on CNN and stream next day on Max.
Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show here on the We Are Libertarians podcast network. I'm so glad you're here, and I started plotting out a show on the debate and then pulled some clips. And then all of a sudden it was about Biden dropping out, and then Chevron deference got killed, and then, I don't know, Biden can kill Trump with immunity, and I don't think he did, but we'll never know. And then all of a sudden Trump gets shot, and now Biden's still gonna have to drop. Every single day is we didn't start the fire here. Every time I try to figure out what we're going to talk about. But this is the show where we're just going to talk about the state of the race here for a little bit and try and get caught up, because by the time I publish this episode, it will be dated. Stay tuned here on the Chris Spangle Show. Hey, welcome back to the Chris Spangle Show. Let me introduce my co-host for this episode. It is Rinehold. Rinehold, I'm just exhausted. I've been reading. For me, I apologize to the audience for not having been here regularly. We are about to correct that. Everything in my family is finally stable. And things are very good, but we are at a point where I have to wade back into the news, and so I've been reading the news every day for a month and a half just to try and get caught up with what's been going on in current events to continue doing this show. And then it's just like you go, well, all right, let's talk about that. We'll do this show on Thursday. You say that on Monday. And by Thursday, 14 things have happened. Judge Cannon tosses out a case, and that doesn't even last. You have a vice presidential pick, and the Republican Party becomes fully Trump's. It's just amazing all the stuff that's happening right now. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, I was going to say, how are we going to find anything to talk about?
Yeah, I know.
So quietly.
Here's the deal, folks. My wife, we are leaving for a week's vacation tomorrow. And my wife scheduled some dinner with some people I don't know, which I don't like to do. Reinhold's known me a long time. I'm not a socializer, am I?
More so than I am, but not as much as some others.
Yeah. I haven't packed, I haven't done laundry, I need to clean the car, I got to do a podcast. So we've got 45 minutes. This is the 45-minute window in my week, this week and next, to do this show. So we're going to jam pack as much as we can in. You're old. And so is it always like this? It just feels like we put a brick on the accelerator in 2007 and never let up. Has it just always been like this?
You go in cycles, right? You got to remember the 60s and 70s were like a similar time frame where everything was just crazy, right?
Two people shot at Gerald Ford. Why would you shoot at Gerald Ford?
Oh, I started looking. I looked up the list of attempted assassinations. I think you'd be surprised at how many there have been in the last 20 years that we really don't know or talk too much about because they were thwarted.
I keep seeing this in the news that we are living in unprecedented times of political assassinations, and we've actually had a brief respite since Reagan on attempts, but even then you've got Gabby Giffords, you've got Steve Scalise, you've got Brett Kavanaugh. There was an attempt on him in the last year. I don't even think people realize that one really flew under the radar in the middle of a bigger news story. There
was ricin sent to Obama that got caught. There was bombs that were sent to a lot of different leaders, including Hillary Clinton. There was a lot of different attempts. There was one assassination attempt where I forget which president it was, but they were going to drive over a bridge in another country, and they were diverted at the last second by Secret Service because there was a bomb on that bridge. It was going to blow as they drove over it. So
I guess there was an Iranian plot on Trump too.
Mm-hmm. There was. So there's a lot of stuff going out there, and everybody's complaining about the Secret Service. And I think for the most part, they've done a good job, but this case, not so much.
The problem is they have to be perfect. You have to be perfect all of the time. Now, this is a huge, I'd say scandal. I don't use that word very often, but I understand they're stretched thin, right? They've got the RNC convention. You've got a lot of people in a lot of places. Like the woman that everybody's making fun of is the DEI hire. She was actually, I saw Eric Trump speak, and he said, she was actually my Secret Service agent for 3 years. She's a top-notch agent. Everybody should leave her alone. I'd never actually heard Eric Trump speak or give an interview. And he was not like Don Jr. As I thought he'd be like Don Jr., who's just like, everything is amazing and perfect. He's so over the top. But CNN grabbed Don Jr. What do you think of the Vance pick? It's an incredible pick. It's amazing. It's just the greatest pick of all time. He's like his dad, but Eric Trump seemed to actually talk like a human. But I don't know. I think when you've got... I know I was on the pat down. We did a bonus episode. Dion is convinced this is a Trump hoax, that he made all of this up, that it's all too convenient. We obviously are libertarians, so our social media is nothing but conspiracies of the deep state, and Laura Loomer's tweeting out that BlackRock and all these people are... I will give those sides the benefit of the doubt. We are anti-conspiracy theorists in general, but... I will say it's hard to look at this and not go, yeah, I can see why people doubt this. There's just too big of gaps here.
There's a lot of gaps, but there's that mindset that I always live by, is that never assign to conspiracy what you can attribute to incompetence.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of incompetent stuff that happened here. Like I'm reading that they noticed the shooter like 20 minutes before he took a shot. And I know they couldn't assume that he was going to shoot. He didn't know if he had a gun or whatever, but at some point you have to say, okay, here's a danger. Let's prevent Trump from coming out and investigate. There was some balls dropped. Let's put it that way in this whole thing. I think if there was an actual attempt by the CIA to kill Trump or some deep state to kill Trump, they would have killed him. It would not have been just poisoned. So they wouldn't have picked a 20-year-old kid who couldn't get into his shooting club because he was too bad of a shot. You know what I mean?
Let's put it this way. Vladimir Putin actually kills his opponents. Mm-hmm. And Vladimir Putin does it when they go on vacation. He slips some polonium and toxic and poisons them with radiation to death.
Or shoots down their plane like they did just recently, right?
Right. Or the Iranian, the helicopter malfunctioned, right? That's how the states that actually murder their opponents do it.
Go check on a list of all the people that have been assassinated by the Russian government, and especially the ones since Putin got into office. It is like 35, 40 different people.
So why wouldn't, if the deep state, if BlackRock and the CIA were going to team up, why wouldn't they just compromise one of his Secret Service agents and shoot him with some sodium pentothal or whatever you do to kill somebody to make their heart stop and make it look like a heart attack? Like, why would you risk Why would you risk civil war by shooting him in the head on live streaming? Like CNN hadn't apparently covered. Like, it's these little facts that are probably not true that get out there. He donated to a Democratic PAC, which turns out not to be true. Or CNN has not aired any of Trump's rallies except for this one. The new one...
The only one he did live, yeah.
The new one that may or may not be true is this building was just bought by a major donor to the DNC and a big conglomerate. I look at it and go, if the deep state was going to kill him, there's a lot. Let's just play the what if game. What if Donald Trump had been killed? Because Tad, who's much more in tune with the alt-right and the kind of the darker regions of the internet than you and I are, he's like, civil war would have been on the table. Like, it would have been, they've killed him, let's get to shooting. Yeah. I don't know. I find it hard to believe that, like, the right, everybody's afraid of these right-wing militias. They're the most in-control people on the planet. They're just unhappy. But I don't know that anybody's going to give up their $175,000 truck and $500,000 home in the suburbs to go shoot for Donald Trump because he just got killed. But what do you think?
Why would you do it in such a way? Like you said, he eats McDonald's all the time. All you have to do is give him an apparent heart attack and nobody questions it.
Yeah.
You're right.
And to the other side, I say, again, if Donald Trump was going to have an assassination attempt put out on himself, like, why would he set it up where he's close enough to get nicked in the ear? Like,
Right.
you can't. Oh, just he should get shot. He should get shot in the shoulder. He doesn't care about human beings. That's their argument. Like, but Donald Trump getting shot, he cares about that. Just he was supposed to get shot in the shoulder and not the ear. And this isn't a movie. That's not how weapons work. Like, an AR-15 is not like a magic bullet.
Yeah, and an AR-15 going in your shoulder is not a nice thing to have happen. It's not something you go, oh, I got a little thing in my shoulder like you might see in a movie or something. It's a pretty damaging thing.
And why would the shooter volunteer to get murdered? Why would he kill himself?
Because that's as soon as he took those shots, he took 5 shots and he was dead immediately. Almost as soon as you see the video of the Secret Service guy looking up to get his location, come back down again, boom, and it was just immediate like that. It was.
I guess the video that we have seen, I heard on CNN today that the video that we have seen of the 2 snipers on the roof, those were not the guys that actually killed him. The sniper who killed him was actually a local police department sniper. Or it was not a Secret Service sniper that killed him. Again, everything you read is subject to be, who knows, right?
Everybody's trying to collect information now. It's really hard. Somebody said that the Biden administration told the head of the Secret Service to not say anything, keep quiet. It's like they're most likely were told, hey, let's wait till we know all the facts before we start putting things out because we have an active investigation going. I doubt it was don't say anything because we don't want anybody to know we did it. That seems strange. But
in this day and age, you can't wait until the facts come out. You have to be out in front of the story.
You got to get those clicks. And the more sensational you can be with any kind of information. So
I don't know if you're on X, but like Colin Rugg, whoever he paid off in Elon Musk circles, that dude is everywhere. I didn't even know who he was, but now all of a sudden my whole feed is Colin Rugg. Mm-hmm. And he's had great information, but I don't know when these things happen. I was camping in Michigan at a very Paradox Eric Larson weekend. I was listening to Eric Larson, the author, on that Dax Shepard podcast while driving to Michigan. I got a text from my friend that said that Trump had been shot. And so, I didn't have good cell signal. I'm like, what? And you just go on, and I saw 4 people identified as the shooter. We haven't learned that lesson. Mm-hmm. How many people have to jump off a bridge before we stop doing that? And people put out all this information that's just totally wrong, or they spread information because they want to, they're natural to go, I found what's going on. I want my friends to know what's going on too, because this is breaking news. But some of that just, I don't know. Sometimes you just have to go, let me take a beat. And it doesn't even matter if it's CNN tweeting it out, because they're getting stuff wrong in these situations. You have to just not do a thing. Oh,
well, and the problem with that is that you don't want to appear to be the one who's taking too long. Like Elon Musk is out there saying, see how great X is because the corporate media takes so long to put out information, and you can get all this information that's on X, and yeah, sometimes it's wrong, but it gets corrected quickly. And I'm like, those corrections don't ever really take effect, right? You correct it, but everybody still goes with the original nonsense you put out to begin with.
Yeah, sorry. Producer Squish just came in, and she's 5 now. She's going to school in a couple weeks. Are you excited?
Hey.
Scared.
You're scared? Don't be scared. Oh, Squish asked me the other day, she goes, is the president like Jesus? So is the president like Jesus?
No.
The president is not Jesus. The president is very much not Jesus.
Let's
talk about how this changes the race, okay? Obviously, the shooting happens Saturday. The Republican convention starts Monday. And I know they ripped up all their speeches, rewrote everything. We're not talking about Joe Biden. And I will say this. I heard Kamala Harris give a speech today. It's a lot different than what I'm hearing at these speeches at the RNC. The RNC is the better days are ahead. Here's what we're going to do. Here's blah, blah, blah. Some Biden talk, but Kamala Harris was just, you remember the criticism of Obama in 2012, how he's going to murder your grandma. She'll be eating dog food. We're going to kick her down the stairs. If you don't pass Obamacare, they're going to take it away from you. That's how it felt. It was very reminiscent of that. Trump gets elected, then all of a sudden, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this is going to happen. It's feeling hopeful, listening to this stuff. But
I saw a lot of stuff at the RNC that was much more, Biden's responsible for every bad thing that's ever happened, and Trump's the only one who can save us.
Yeah.
Type thing.
But the reality of it is, Trump is a changed man, Dennis. Here's what you need to understand. This changed him. He's more religious. Now, I'm not going to discount, and I'm going to treat him like he's a human being. I'm sure this messed him up in some way. It had to have. I get that he probably doesn't have a lot of access to his own emotions, but you can't not have something like this. We're presuming it's real, and he's not in on it, okay? I would imagine it would change you, and he has seemed very muted. But, you know, if you're falling for this whole thing like he's going to be a different person after this, I got a bridge to sell you in Arizona, like, or whatever, oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you.
Yeah, and his true social posts haven't been very much different than they have been before either. So
yeah,
a lot of unhinged rantings on there, but it almost to me would seem that it might goad him into being more of him than, you know, like this may be my last shot. I'm going for it. And I think that's really what a lot of people are missing with what he plans to be doing. Things that stopped him the first time he was in office. He's going to try to eliminate a lot of those things.
I think I think he's going to do that anyways, like regardless of this. Like in terms,
I think he's going to double down from it.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to make him a softer person.
No, if you look at his mental makeup and you go through historical examples of people that have gone through something like this, they become more egomaniacal. They become more cultish. I mean, put on your HBO cult documentary hat. Like, those guys don't get less culty after they've survived something like this. You don't think that God Almighty has spared you to just become think less of yourself. So, fire trucks are on the street. They always go to that one house. There's a house like 4 houses down. It's the same house, same dudes. Just always a problem going on over there. Yeah, so I think you're right. I think this feeds into a psychology that him and his followers look at him as a man of destiny. And it's more important to do these things because now God has blessed what we are doing.
It's ordained. It's written that he should be president and do the things that he says he wants to do for those reasons. And the funny thing is that everybody who supports him all have a different list of the things that he's supposed to be doing ordained by God.
Yeah, like the Project 2025 thing you've talked about Project 2025 on the show before, and you've talked about it for a long time, and we'll do its own episode on that probably in a couple weeks when I get back. But your concerns are not like what the concerns that I see high school friends who are Democrats are posting about it. They're like hyperventilating about it, like almost like QAnon people. Like it's the problem with Project 2025 is there's a lot of stuff in there, and everybody is taking all of these things that have really been in the forefront of the MAGA movement for a long time. This is Pat Buchanan stuff. This is things that have been talked about for a while. Those things grab attention, and people see those things and go, oh my God, they're going to do this. They're going to implement this stuff, blah, 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 blah. And everybody else is, they've been wanting to do it for years. There's not going to be a big deal. They're never going to get it in because people are going to stop it. But what they're not catching, and the people on the left and the right are both ignoring, is that the plan is in place in order to make it possible to do some of these things, because the goal is to eliminate anybody in the executive branch who would stand up and say, no, you can't do that because it's against the Constitution, or no, you can't do that because it's illegal. It would be replacing everybody with people who are loyal to Trump, where Trump says, hey, go do this. Like Esper was told to shoot at protesters, shoot them in the leg, because don't kill them, but shoot them in the leg, and that'll stop it. That'll stop the protesters if you shoot them. And Esper said, no, we can't do that. Now, if he puts somebody in place who says, okay, whatever you say, sir, because you're Trump, you're
and
the president,
I'm following you, and I will do it. And so he could do that sort of thing. And now we have no way to actually prosecute him for doing that sort of thing. It'd be completely legal to do. That's another story. We can have another.
Yeah, no, I think what people are missing is that the imperial presidency has been on a long march for a very long time, for 100 years. And this was the Tea Party argument against Obama and his expansion of executive orders. It was the Democrats' argument against the signing statements by George Bush, right? Like, it's these little cracks in the dam. And where something like the Project 20, like, it's not Project 25. Here's what you have to understand about the Heritage Foundation. Donald Trump does not care about the Heritage Foundation. He doesn't care about, what's the guy that runs it, Roberts. Like, this is a fundraising operation. What they did is they took the wish list of the right, put it in, and got a bunch of people to co-sponsor this, project, because what has happened is because Trump is essentially about Trump and doesn't really have a political ideology, there's all these people like Tucker Carlson and the Heritage Foundation and Oren Cass and Sohrab Ahmari that try to put some sort of philosophical or political governing structure to Trump. Trump just, his main motivating issue is immigration. Everything else he doesn't really care about. He just, whatever the last person who was in the room decides to tell him is what he's going to do. And so let me finish. The Vance pick is like the perfect analogy of how Trump governs and will govern. Mike Pence didn't do what he wanted him to do on January 6th, and so he replaced him with someone who will do what Donald Trump wants him to do. He will vote or violate the Constitution in order to do what Donald Trump wants. We get to the end of this term, and he says, you know what? The Constitution as written says what the Constitution means in that amendment is that you can't serve 2 consecutive terms as president. Right? Not 2 terms total, but 2 consecutive. And he loses the election because voters go, we've had enough Trump after 8 total years of Trump. And they get back to the January 6th moment. Vance is going to do what Trump wants him to do. Now, he wasn't going to pick Vance. He was going to pick Doug Burgum because Doug Burgum was going to give him a ton of money because Doug Burgum's a rich guy. He's governor of North Dakota. Marco Rubio was the front runner, and then Tucker Carlson calls him and says, you want to do these things with Ukraine. Marco Rubio is a war hawk. The deep state will assassinate you to put their guy in, and that scared the crap out of Trump. And so they so Marco Rubio's out. So then he goes to Doug Burgum, and then they have these meetings the night before the pick and on Sunday night, and he's decided it's Doug Burgum. Donald Jr. gets wind of this. Eric and Don Jr. go in and say, you can't do this. It's got to be Vance. It's got to be Vance. And they were just the last person to talk to him. And they convinced him he's the loyal guy to you. And so this pick, the vice presidential pick, is really inconsequential, but it's always a great understanding of how someone will govern, right? Barack Obama needed some wisdom, and he didn't have a lot of political experience, and so he picked Joe Biden. Mitt Romney wanted to be really efficient and make government efficient, and so he picked someone who he liked, who he thought he could work well with, that understood his philosophy, in Paul Ryan, who had a lot of experience in the Congress. It tells a lot about the psychology and the way that they're going to govern. And so the Vance pick, I think, is instructive in that it shows you he's going to do the last thing somebody tells him to do, except for immigration, where he's going to go as hard as possible. When you see signs, Rinehold, at the RNC convention that are not hand-painted, but campaign printed that say mass deportations now, or whatever it was, I think that's a really good indication that if you're looking at the list of Project 2025, that's where they're going to start. It's what he was really big on and what he did terribly well or terribly, regardless of how you view it. I think immigration is going to be the place that they start. That's the thing that Vance is talking about, and that's the thing I think we'll hear a lot tonight when he accepts the nomination.
Yep. And the other thing about 2025 is that it's not just fundraising, but it's also building a database of people, right? So this whole process that they started a year and a half ago, when they put this out, is that they put in there that we want you to put your name in the hat to be a part, because we're going to replace 50,000 people inside the executive branch, people who are protected, but they're going to put in the executive order that Trump put in right before he got voted out last time.
Yeah, read the book Fifth. Have you read Fifth Risk by Michael Lewis?
I have not read that.
Okay, where he basically takes these functions of the government, like the Coast Guard or the Hurricane Service, and explains how these agencies that we don't know anything about perform exemplary functions. The market couldn't make these things work, so the government has to do them. And Trump put in loyalists that destroyed these agencies. And so it's like a really interesting book. As a libertarian, it was pretty challenging. But it outlines exactly what you're talking about with specific examples.
Right. And so what they're doing is they're collecting a list of all these people, and these people are only going to be put in place if they prove a loyalty to Trump. Right. That's the goal, or whoever the Republican president is, because that's how they write those things. But it's going to be whoever's loyal to him is going to get these job offerings, not whether they're capable to do the job, etc. They're just going to put in yes men. And then he's not going to have anybody to push back on him. So that's that building of the database so they can hit the ground running day one to start replacing people is the overriding goal of that Project 2025. It's right in the front. That's what it states.
All right. So we're talking like Trump is inevitable. I look at it and I go, he's had a really good week. He's had a really good couple weeks. Here's a guy who in 2021 nobody wanted to touch because he was so toxic, and now we're in July of the election year, and he seems inevitable. But man, a week and a half is a lifetime, right?
Yeah, remember the last podcast we did together when we were talking about how everything was going great, where Trump had got convicted. He was going in trial. He was getting convicted for the 34 felonies. He was losing all this stuff was happening. But the problem with that is that all turns around immediately when you've got a Supreme Court that's willing to just do whatever, right? And you've got judges who are willing to do whatever. Things change, right? That's just the way it goes. And it's going to change again several times before we get to November. We think everything's set in stone now and it's just going to fly through to November, but there's going to be a bunch of things that's going to happen between now and then, including the fact that we may not have Biden running by the time we get to the Democratic National
in the last 24 hours.
And that's the amazing thing to me, is that with everything that happened with the assassination attempt, all of a sudden everybody just stopped talking about Biden for 4 days. And it seems like if the Democrats had just shut up, that all could have went away.
But the thing is,
Biden pushing and doing everything he could to get himself out there and show himself capable. He was trying to override the bad
and it
debate.
didn't work.
But when all of a sudden you've got the Democrats, the leaders of the party, starting to come out and saying, nope, he's going to be gone in a week. He's finally realizing he needs to go, and he gets the COVID, and all this stuff's now looking inevitably like he's going to say, for health reasons, he's going to step down.
Here's my conspiracy theory. Okay. You've poo-pooed this. You're a little more, I'm not going to say pro-Biden, but a little like more, I'm like, this guy's decrepit. And you're like, come on. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you're a little bit more forgiving of the man than I am at this point.
I know he's gone downhill. He's gotten older. He also has a lot of challenges that he has to deal with that people misinterpret to be other things. But that doesn't mean I think he's where he was 4 years ago. No way. This job takes way too much out of you. Trump's not anywhere where he was 4 years ago either. But
no, for sure. But if you look at the debate performances from 12 to 16 to 20 to 24, it's striking. His decline, especially in the last year. I think the last year, 6 months have been bad. And I honestly, I don't know what it is, but it's like you'd see Donald Trump or Don Jr. or some right-wing page like DC Drano post some like Joe Biden wandering around the stage, like the Clooney fundraiser that George Clooney wrote the New York Times op-ed saying he should drop out. That was a big one where he's like wandering off stage and Obama grabs his arm to pull him off stage because he's a little lost. That was like 2 months ago. And you'd see those things, and if you had been paying attention to the news or just to like politics, you'd see, all right, this guy's not where he was 4 years ago, which wasn't great 4 years ago. Remember how old we thought he was and he was just staying in the basement? It's gotten to a point where it is a little sad. Like I just saw a video before we started of him almost kissing a woman that looks like Jill Biden. This was in the last week. Yeah, but Jill comes over and stops him, and he's, oh, and he like makes a surprised face. Oh, like he didn't recognize her face. There was the video last night of him. He couldn't get into the SUV. It's just,
he doesn't have massive arthritis issues right now.
I understand that, but
what I'm saying, he's much more foggy, and he has much more often those occasions of being very foggy, as it were. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, he's ready to go and energetic and the man he was 20 years ago. No, that's so.
Yeah, but Rinehold, excuse me. Here's my pushback on that. I think in 2020, when Ryan Lindsay was making the stuttering argument, I went, oh, okay, I can be forgiving of that. Because you could, and even in the last 3 years, you could go, all right, maybe he just isn't a great speaker, like George Bush wasn't a good speaker. Maybe it is the stutter. Maybe it's just he's a little stressed out. It's gotten to a point in the last 6 months where it's a little bit worse. And the thing that is telling is that it is not me, a podcast host who leans right, saying that. What the people that are saying it right now are Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, some of his closest aides. It is everybody but Ron Klain and his wife and Hunter. It's everybody who has in his immediate circle, and even some of his closest circles are now leaking to Axios and the New York Times and other places like, yeah, we're a little concerned, which makes me look at this and go, all right, why did you schedule a debate before the convention? I've never heard of that before.
Right.
And is that his people saying, we can't get him out of the race? What if we put him on display and the world sees it, which triggers a conversation? And then after the debate, to make him look like he's good, we're going to force him to do 118 events in 3 weeks, which I think is the number, with a ton of interviews. He's on BET last night talking about, he look at all the heat I'm getting for Secretary of Defense, black man. What? I almost look at it like his closest advisors in his campaign have set him up to fail, and that makes you go, is that on purpose? So Barack Obama can shove the knife in his back?
So a lot of things going on here. First of all, if Trump had not ran and been poised to win the nomination fairly handedly, it looked like, I don't think Biden gets in there. I don't think he reruns again. They failed miserably when they picked Kamala Harris to take over and be the new face of the Democratic Party and be able to run in 2024 instead. She didn't do well. They didn't put her out the way she needed to go. She stumbled at the beginning, and they just gave up on that. So that cost him there. So now they're running into Biden wants to run again now because he feels like he's the only person who can beat Trump, and we need to beat Trump. And that's his goal, and he wants that to be his legacy. But he's ruining his legacy by not holding to that initial standard of saying he probably wouldn't run again. And now, if you go back, he didn't say, I'm not going to run again. He said, I probably won't, or we'll look at it then.
Yeah, I think the phrasing was, I want to be a bridge to the next generation.
Yeah, and people, what they wanted to mean from that, right? But that would have been the smartest thing for him to do, because there was already problems with him and his age then. They should have pumped up whoever the VP was, and that person should have been a person who they wanted to be the face of the Democratic Party moving forward. And they just did not do it. So now they're scrambling, because now they're going to have to find somebody who could beat Trump at short notice and make that happen. The other thing too is a lot of people who are saying that they don't think Biden can beat Trump, and they're not saying it because they think he's addled or whatever. They're just saying, I don't think he can beat him. So
the polling's just too bad.
Yeah, the polling's bad, so we just got to get him out of there. So they're just throwing him under the bus.
If the polling were good, he'd be fine.
Yeah, they'd all be behind him.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the cynical part, is that you've pointed out that it's exactly right. These Democratic elites only care about this because he's losing. And I heard a pollster today say that in 2020, there wasn't a day that Joe Biden wasn't leading in the averages. And this time, there hasn't been a day in 2024 where Trump hasn't been leading in the averages. And I think if that were flip-flop, but the problem is Trump almost gets assassinated, gets one of his court cases cleared, picks J.D. Vance, has a convention, has a giant unveiling tonight where we're going to see him speak for the first time since his assassination attempt. And Joe Biden still can't get this out of the news. We are still talking about it. Like we are spending most of our time today in the news cycle talking about Barack Obama going around Biden to get him out. Nancy Pelosi telling him he can't be in the race. Like, they could have just let it go, but they don't think he can overcome this at this point.
And the other question too is, does this actually help keep Trump from having that bump by keeping Biden in the news? The whole Biden thing. If they've made the decision that Jonah Goldberg had thought a couple weeks ago that they had made the decision that they would all stick behind Biden, and then a couple of weeks later he would say, look, I'm having some health issues, and because of that I'm deciding not to run again, and quietly go away, right? So maybe they're just changing the plan that they had in order to get this back in the news to take away from the heat of Trump and the RNC. Because now people are talking about Biden all the time instead of really focusing on what he's saying and reporting on it.
Yeah. One ironclad rule of the 2020 election was that whoever was the topic of the news cycle was losing. So the polls would start to crater. And that's why Joe Biden went to the basement and never came out. And he let Trump be a fool when he got COVID, let him be a fool in the middle of the George Floyd stuff, let him be a fool, and just would say, I've got experience to fix this. Let me know if you need me. And then would, like, he was taking, remember all the press was upset and Republicans were needling him for being Sleepy Joe because he was like capping his press at 10:30 in the morning or something in 2020. And that's basically what he probably should do, is just let Trump be Trump. And I know this whole act of he's a new person, we're all about unity, it's all going to be different now. I'm not buying it. Because
not gonna happen.
No. Anytime
you're already seeing it.
When politicians talk about unity, they don't mean for themselves. When politicians say we need to lower the temperature, they mean you and they mean me. They do not mean themselves, and they do not mean their campaigns.
Or their opponents. Their opponents need to be quiet.
Yeah, you be quiet.
Like Trump hasn't for so many years just been pushing the look, just January 6th and beyond. It's just amazing that they're like taking the high road at this point on this.
Joe Biden, and to the counterpoint, like Joe Biden gives an oval address about taking down the temperature and then goes on TV the next day and says he's a fundamental threat to democracy. And you're just like, dude. All right, let's address this shooter. I can guarantee you, was not influenced by Joe Biden tweeting out the word bullseye. I can promise you he probably never heard Joe Biden say that he was an existential threat to democracy. Maybe, but I'm highly doubting it. I'm guessing we're not finding out what we normally find out, which is he's a deeply troubled person who shot her because grammar was messed up, or Loeffner and Gabby Giffords, or a complete lunatic influenced by politics. Yeah, the Steve Scalise guy is the only one of these mass shootings or attempts that I can think of that was actually politically motivated, and he was real crazy.
I think the attack on Pelosi's husband was probably politically motivated.
I thought he was schizophrenic as well, though.
He was schizophrenic, but he was saying he was doing it to get to Pelosi. Now, whether it was because of the politics of the time or it was just the last name he heard, who knows? But there's a lot of that going around. But this shooter doesn't, from what I've seen, I guess they found a message that he put on a gaming website saying, look for the 13th. This is where my time shines. This is where I start, that sort of thing. I think from what I'm hearing, and this is just my initial take on it, and I will immediately back away from this if we find out anything else. So I'm just saying it right now. But I think he couldn't make it into that shooting club because he wasn't as good enough shot, and he wanted to prove them wrong.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting I haven't heard about the shooting club. What is this?
So he was wearing a shooting club shirt when he was shot, when he did the shooting. And there's, from what I understand, this is a lot of reading. If you read a lot of different things, but apparently he was kicked out of the club, or he was not able to make it into the club because his shooting wasn't good enough.
Oh, you know what? That's as good of a theory as anything.
Yeah.
There's no evidence on this guy. He's got no social media. There's no manifesto. Yeah. It's He is like so many young men. He's just a lost soul. He's a ghost. And I think that's part of what makes it so conspiracy driven. It's like the Vegas shooter. The fact that this guy had no one that knew him, nothing going on in his life, he had a girlfriend, but he had no job or what. It's just so I look at it and I go, okay, I buy the theory that he was like selling guns to ISIS and got killed, and then they shot. ISIS was the one, because there's no other information, and that's the problem with the Secret Service not talking, with Biden not really giving answers. You just feed it. You feed all of these conspiracies. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know. There's a song by Harry Chapin named called Sniper. And it's based on a shooting that happened in, I believe it was in Texas. The guy went up to the top of a tower and started shooting people in the city, and it was just random. And nobody knew why. Nobody could figure out why.
Yeah.
His take in the song was that he was not seen. Nobody saw him. Everybody saw him as this weird guy off the side, was a loner by himself. and his mother didn't love him, and he wasn't getting the things he needed to determine whether he was even whether he existed, right? So his idea was, if I shoot enough, people will know me. I will exist. I will be real. That question will be answered. Now, later they find out that the guy had some sort of brain injury that was causing some problems, and he went a little nuts from that. But it's a good as a thought that I think that Harry puts in there, is that a lot of these people are just trying to determine whether or not they even exist, because they're separated from society in some ways or another. They're lost people. And a lot of these people who we find are shooters have that same situation where they're just not part of normal society. They're outcasts.
Yeah. All right. Look, that's most of our audience, so don't do anything stupid while we're gone. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Axios, I'll finish with this. Axios is reporting that Biden may drop out this weekend. Let's just finish with a prediction. Do you think Biden stays in?
At this point, I don't think he does. I wouldn't have said that 2 weeks ago, but based off of the fact that they brought it back up again when they didn't need to, and they had the opportunity to quell all the stuff and get it out of the news, but they forcibly brought it back in, I think there's a plan in place that's being worked on.
I agree with you, because having been a part of libertarian politics, but politics nonetheless at a high level, like, things take time to do things. And imagine how hard it is to take your grandpa's keys away. Now imagine that person is president and they've worked their whole life to be president. It's just impossible to get these people to give up power. Look at Dianne Feinstein passing away in office when she didn't need to be there.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
You're getting, if you don't like it, Democrats, then you should have convinced her. Yeah, I agree with you. I would have said Friday that there's maybe. And then I told Reagan on Sunday, I'm like, it's just Biden versus Trump now. There's no way he gets out. He's been saved by the bell. And the fact that this has come back with even more heat, you get, like, Adam Schiff is not doing anything and putting anything on record when he's running for Senate in California and needs those donors. Mm-hmm. He needs money. Do you think he's going to put out anything that is going to affect his ability to raise money in a California Senate race? He knows exactly which way the wind is blowing, and he knows inside information. That's my speculation. But I think he's toast. I think they just don't have, and I think the fact that he has COVID, and now there's even more videos of these, like, just embarrassing interviews and things that he's done in the last, like, couple of days. I know what they were trying to do is when Trump gets shot, they were trying to get their name, they were trying to get him out there to show he was presidential. They were trying to get him back to the White House and let's take advantage of the moment. And you have the power of the presidency and the pedestal to step in and fundamentally change the trajectory, or at least steal a little bit of the momentum. And it ended up backfiring. I think these interviews have just not helped. And look, I'm not rooting for Joe Biden to win. I don't think he should be president in any way, shape, or form. I think I think the American people have a right to vote up or down on whether or not Kamala Harris could be president. Mm-hmm. I just think fundamentally Joe Biden is not going to make it through 4 years, and the American people have the right to vote for Kamala Harris as opposed to voting for her at an abstention because she's the vice presidential candidate. Right.
And a lot of things people don't get about this race, too, is that we have 9 to 10% in all these polls, 9 to 10% Kennedy voters.
Yeah.
That, by the time it comes down to the election, they're not going to go Kennedy.
It'll be 3%.
So, yeah. So where do they break? And I think a lot of them were Kennedy voters because they just couldn't do Biden.
It's vaccines. I guarantee you, look, maybe RFK's son did accidentally tweet out that video of Donald Trump saying he was skeptical on vaccines.
No, he didn't accidentally. He says he did it on purpose.
No, and then RFK's sick about it.
Yeah. Or
maybe that's like part of skullduggery on somebody's part. Because here's the thing, as third party, I've been in a third party forever. It's always 10%. Gary Johnson was always at 10%. Our candidates are always at 10% in these polls because people hope, dream, and wish in July and August and September. Yeah. And then when they actually walk in to vote after Labor Day, they go, it's just too important to not let the other party win. I've got to vote for my guy. Yep. And that's why the stolen vote thing doesn't make sense, is because people do go home when they vote And so the votes that the candidate actually do get are people that they activated. Somebody saw them on their ballot and went to vote for that person. So yeah, I've got to run anyways. But all right, thanks, Rinehold. We are sorry this one is short. I know an hour for us is short, and I wish I could keep talking about this stuff because it's great, and I wish I could do a show next week, but I will be in the Outer Banks enjoying the sun, and I desperately need a week off. I'm burnt out. So we'll be back in a couple weeks, and we'll be picking it up every week or more from then on through the election, and we're excited about it, and we hope that you'll join us. On behalf of Rinehold, we say thank you, and we will see you again in a couple weeks.